Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Um, we have a great show for you today. We will be covering Manchester City's stalemate affair with Inter Milan as they played out a nil-nil draw with Inter Milan. We'll discuss PSG earning a last-gasp win thanks to a shocking mistake from Girona's goalkeeper. We'll discuss Tottenham and whether or not they should be concerned about their lack of cutting edge in the attack, with the slow start that they've had to the season. And then we'll preview Arsenal going to Bergamo tomorrow to take on Atalanta. And make sure you stick around for the end of the show where I'll be giving you my top headlines, reactions to some of the top headlines going on in the soccer world. Before we start off, though, if you have a question during the show, we want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes the show great, and we thrive on your energy and insights. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Use the super chat feature. Just click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We really rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button and let's keep the show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can also go to the gsmcpodcast.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. We do have to start off, though, with Manchester City's stalemate affair with Inter Milan as they played out a 0-0 draw. They're both opening games of the Champions League. We're not really used to this new format in the Champions League with games being played this early in September. We actually have Champions League games tomorrow as well. Tomorrow as a Thursday night. We know Thursday night is really known for the Europa League, and nowadays the Conference League, that's their time to shine, the Thursday nights. But for this first opening week, we'll be having Champions League games also in that window, as we'll be previewing Arsenal taking on Atalanta tomorrow. In regards to this game, we saw two teams that are, that are building something steady in this season, trying to both build momentum as they both go after domestic titles. And we saw two teams that really approached this game as this is a marathon and not a sprint. We saw a measured approach from both teams. We know Inter Milan and how tough they are defensively, playing with Acerbi, dissect, and Bastoni. This was a good defensive effort by them to contain Erling Haaland, who we know we've discussed this 9 goals in 4 games up to this point in this season. He's been absolutely fire. And Bastoni, Acerbi, Bishek did a good job in being able to contain him. This is the first game that he has not scored this season. That he hasn't scored this season. And so, yeah, overall, good defensive effort from Inter Milan. I thought City did still have their opportunities that they just couldn't get right. I think Gundogan specifically, he had a really perfect opportunity near the end of the game, a winning opportunity there. Couldn't really pick, he heads the ball into either side of Summer. It's, that's the game, that's the victory for Manchester City. He heads it straight into Sommer's hands. And yeah, Inter Milan, they had a few opportunities in transition. They didn't go with Lautaro Martinez, probably resting him for the Milan derby. They didn't play Dumfries as well. They went instead with Darmian and Taremi in those positions. But Inter Milan, they did have some opportunities in transition. They had one really good one where the ball gets played to Darmian. I thought Darmian should have had a strike on goal. Then didn't really trust himself from the position that he found himself. Tries to backheel it into the path of Çalhanoğlu. Çalhanoğlu couldn't get quite on the end of it. I thought overall Inter Milan, they had their few opportunities to make something happen of it in transition. Couldn't really find that final ball, get that final finish correct. Overall, yeah, and overall, a nil-nil game was probably deserved for both teams. I did think if anyone was gonna win it was City, which is not hugely surprising with City playing at the Etihad. Not hugely. And, it's a good result for Inter Milan being able, with the Milan derby coming up this weekend, not playing a full-fledged first team, playing most of them, but, giving the rest of important players to Dumfries and Lautaro Martinez to be able to escape Etihad with the point against City, who are probably the favorites in the Champions League, the best team in the world. It's a good result for them. It is a good result for them. I thought both teams had numerous opportunities, though. They could have taken advantage of. It was a little bit of a basketball game. This game was. We had some quality shown from both teams. Inter Milan, they were very strong and tight knit in defense, but they were willing to get numbers forward on the break and really go after it, which made it an interesting game. I think Simone Inzaghi set up Inter really, really well to be defensively solid, but also be a threat going forward as well. And they did a really good job, as I said, defending Erling Haaland as well. Mkhitaryan, I forgot about that. Mkhitaryan had a really big opportunity. It was a late opportunity where he just missed right above the bar. He, shot it with some venom. But with the pace, and not close range, but in very good shooting position, and it just went right over the bar. And then I talked about Gundogan, another one, a close range header. That he could have done better on. City had 22 shots to Inter 13, but were only able to manage to get one more shot on target, with 6 shots on target. Then AC Milan, not AC Milan, then Inter Milan did with 5. Had with 5. Now, obviously, also another big factor was, I talked about it, Inter Milan. They had this weekend's AC Milan game to worry about. So, they gave a little bit of rest to a few key players. Manchester City, Kyle Walker, Phil Foden, John Stones, they came out. Phil Foden, he came off the bench. Kyle Walker, John Stones wasn't even involved. Again, talking about a lot of the guys that have had a deep run in the European Championship, had a long run in the summer. They've been really given key moments of rest so far in the start of the season, especially with this game being midweek and that game coming up against Arsenal on Sunday. It was expected that some of these guys would get a rest, and Phil Foden coming off the bench. The thing that I called, though, yesterday that ended up being true was Rodri. Rodri, getting off the mark this season, making his, being introduced this season. He came off the bench against Brentford, but this is his first real cameo, and he started in their opening Champions League tie. And he played the whole 90 minutes, which just surprised me a little bit because, I fully expect him to also start and play the entire game against Arsenal on Sunday. This is a Rodri that's fresh. He's had essentially the first, month of the season off, really. So, we knew that Pep Guardiola, it would have been a little bit of a disservice to Rodri to just throw him into the fire and in that Arsenal game, in that sort of game, with the two teams battling for, Premier League supremacy. So you give Rodri a little bit of not a warm up, because this is a Champions League tie against Inter Milan, but a chance to smooth into that game. So I did think it was, Rodri would get introduced, and I ended up being correct. Pep Guardiola introduced him in this game, started him, and obviously he played a really good game, as he always does. And yeah, overall with this game, we know the format of the new Champions League, and with 8 games, you do have a little bit of breathing room as well. Now, you don't want to get too complacent, because you want to make sure that, especially these two teams that have high aspirations, not just in Champions League, but in football in general, in terms of domestic leagues and domestic competition. These are two teams that have real high expectations. They want to win as many trophies as possible, and they would want to get into the top 8 to avoid playing 2 unnecessary games in January. They don't want to find themselves in a position playing games that they don't need to play, which is, you play those. If you have to play a playoff to get into the Champions League, you're essentially playing 10 group stage games. You're already having to play 2 extra in this new format. You don't want to put, you don't want to add on another 2 on top of that. It's just, there is a huge incentive for these teams to get into the top 8. But with 8 games, there is a little bit more breathing room. City, they move on obviously they play Arsenal this weekend. They move on in the Champions League. Their next 3 games are against Slovan Bratislava, Sparta Praha, Sporting Lisbon. So definitely some room there for them to get some points, no doubt about that. Inter Milan, they obviously have the Milan derby coming up this weekend, but in terms of Champions League, they move on to play Crvena Zvezda, Young Boys, and then they have that big game where Arsenal will be coming to the San Siro. That game would be around early November. That's going to be a very, very, very fascinating game, in my opinion, one of the games of the group stages. So yeah, I think both teams did well to get a point. Obviously, City being at home, they always expect to win. But at the end of the day, you're going up against a really tough team and a really good defense, and sometimes the ball doesn't enter the back of the net, and it is one of those days. I think these two teams recognize that this is a marathon and not a sprint, and are not too overly worried with one game this early on in the Champions League campaign. Show break here coming up. When we come back, though, we will discuss PSG getting a late win over Girona.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Before the break, we discussed City stalemate affair with Inter Milan as they played out a 0-0 draw. We move on to react to PSG. They have earned the Last-Gasp win in their opening game of their Champions League campaign when they took on Girona, the surprise team from La Liga last season, finishing third. And PSG got a late win after a horrible late game blunder from the Girona goalkeeper, Gazania, the Argentinian, makes a bad mistake, literally fumbles the ball into the back of the net, essentially after Nuno Mendes. People are calling it a shot. In my opinion, I think he's just trying to play it across the 6-yard box, play it across the goalkeeper, and just make it dangerous. But people are saying it was an attempted shot. Look, I do have to say, if it was an attempted shot from that angle, well, he has belief from himself, because that's a weird angle to be taking a shot. In my opinion, I think he's just trying to play the ball, across the 6-yard box. Maybe someone can get a foot on it. It instead beats the goalkeeper right through his hand, in between his legs, and yeah, and being in the last minute as well is it's a blunder beyond despair. And by the way, before that, he made a few saves, and they had the clean sheet in the bag, and he made a few saves, and just in that one moment is devastating, really. This is a Girona team that's playing in the Champions League for the first time, and I don't know if Girona has ever played in the Champions League. I'd have to fact check that, but definitely the first time in recent history, at least. And in playing that game, and this is their first ever appearance in the Champions League, actually, Girona. And being in that sort of moment, being in your first Champions League campaign, and in your opening game, you go away to the Parc des Princes, you earn yourself a hard-fought, point just to fumble it away at the end. It's really devastating and heartbreaking for Girona. Look, for PSG, that's an important moment for them, I have to say, and a moment that should not be underestimated for PSG. That own goal, that mistake, that's important, because PSG have a very difficult 8-game group stage. They go on to take on Arsenal at the Emirates. They go to Arsenal to take them on at the Emirates Stadium. They play PSV. They play Atletico. They go to Munich to take on Bayern. They have to play a Salzburg team that also is really, really well. And then they play Manchester City and Stuttgart. That is this City, Arsenal, Bayern, Atletico Madrid, and those are 4 really difficult games. And on top of that, you have to go to Stuttgart, who we saw yesterday against Real Madrid. They're willing to go at you. They can play some really good football. Salzburg as well. We know Red Bull Salzburg with their no, that's Leipzig, not Salzburg. But I'm thinking of Leipzig. But yeah, so Salzburg is not as difficult game as I'm making out to be. But specifically Stuttgart, that's a team that can put up a good fight as well. So look, that that could be a pivotal moment for PSG. That own goal, really, because watching this game, PSG weren't exactly you know, in the first half, Girona, they controlled the ball for moments in the game. Like, they had some really really good possession, and PSG struggled really to play in that first half. Despite the stats look dominant, and in the second half PSG were the far better team. 26 shots to 3 for Girona, 5 shots on target for PSG to 1 for Girona. But PSG weren't exactly as dominant as I expected, despite in the second half when they were chasing the game, when they were playing with desperation. Yes, even though they did look a little bit of lacking ideas, and they did lack cutting edge at times, there's still a big issue when it comes to Ousmane Dembele and his end product. He had a few opportunities there that he needs to do better on, but going back to what I was saying, in that first half, Girona they weren't playing bad. They weren't playing bad, and PSG in that second half they put on a lot of pressure. It was a relentless amount of pressure, and it did seem like the breakthrough was probably gonna come, and it did end up coming in the most unlikely of circumstances. But yeah. Girona's defense, they defended really, really well. They neutralized PSG in the first half. And, PSG were frustrated in that first half. And Girona was able to have their few moments. And in that second half, though, PSG were a lot better. Asensio actually had a good opportunity in the first half that he couldn't get into the right side of the post. And then he suffered an injury, which led to Randall Colomwani coming on. When the second half began, though, that's when we saw Ousmane Dembele, him make runs, him show what he can do, show that he has great ability. But there was a few, the end product was, he had one opportunity going in 1-on-1, and he decides to go straight. He doesn't cut across the defender. He decides to go straight, and he allows the Girona defender Ladislav Krejci to make a last-ditch challenge that kept it 0-0. Dembele, there's the same issues with Dembele. He's really good in terms of pure talent and ability, and he's good on the right and left foot, but his end product doesn't necessarily mean just his final finish. It's his final ball as well. It's the timing of the ball. It's whether you should play the ball across the 6-yard area, if you cut it back, whether you should cross it, whether you should play the first time, whether you should cut in, cut out, whatever. It's the final third decision making. It's not just the final finish. Just in general, his end product is just not good enough and hasn't been good enough, period, ever in his career. And it's something that we've always said, okay, it's going to come. But in my opinion, end product is not something that you can get better. I mean, you could get better on your end product, and it's something you can work on. But if your end product is crap, your end product is gonna be crap. That's the final. That's the final line. I mean, and yeah, with PSG, I can't put into words how big of a win this is. This is a huge victory again. This is a team that has to face Arsenal, Bayern, Atletico Madrid, Manchester City, and still left in the Champions League. So, get your wins when you can get them. Because if they drop points at home in their opening game against Girona team, which is one of their, it's not an easy game by any means, no, but it's one of the less difficult games. There's no doubt about it. This game, the Salzburg game, these are the games that you have to take advantage of. Now they go on to take PSV. Girona, on the other hand, I believe they take on Feyenoord in their next Champions League in the next Champions League game, and that's actually going to be their first ever home game in the Champions League at the Montilivi, which is going to be very fun to watch. That's a stadium. It's only about 15,000. Getting to host the Champions League it's going to be really great to see. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will discuss Tottenham and the issues that they face in attack.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we discussed PSG earning a Last-Gasp win against Girona. We move on to discuss Tottenham. They actually played today in the AFL Cup. They took on Coventry. If you remember, Coventry gave United some troubles last year in the FA Cup semi-final. Coventry led, we know the American international Haji Wright plays for them. And yeah, Tottenham, obviously they went in with a little bit of a second team, with Ben Davies, Draxen, Bergvall, Timo Werner, Odegaard, not exactly who actually Odegaard actually suffered a significant injury for Postecoglou. Postecoglou announced, but yeah, Tottenham, they were able to get the win. They went down actually in the 63rd minute to Thomas Asante's goal, but Jet Spence in the 80th minute was able to equalize before Brennan Johnson, who they were both second half substitutes as well, was able to get the winning goal in stoppage time, 92 minutes. Obviously, I'm not going to give you a tactical breakdown. I would be 100% honest. I did not watch the game. I was tuned into the Champions League ties that were going on at similar times. But yeah, the Spurs late show saves them in the EFL Cup. But moving on to Tottenham, we know, Tottenham has had clear issues this season, in my opinion. They've had 4 games in the Premier League. And in every single game, they've been, in terms of general play, in terms of being able to control possession, create opportunities or have moments that they should be creating, clear-cut opportunities. Just in terms of general play, being able to control the ball, being able to be the protagonist, to be more on the attack. In all 4 games, they have outplayed the opposition. In quote-unquote, they have outplayed. But they haven't been clinical enough. They've lacked the ruthlessness and the cutting edge in the attack, specifically in that final third, which is the main reason why they have only 4 points only in this Premier League campaign, with 3 bad results, drawing in the opening game against Leicester, a team that they played completely out of the park, just lacked that ruthlessness to put them away when they had their opportunities to, and allowed Leicester to stay in. Against Newcastle, sort of the same thing in terms of really dominating the game, but despite having real dominance, not being able to take advantage of it, and then individual moments from Newcastle playing in transition, in which also the combination of why Tottenham hasn't had success this season so far to start off the season in the Premier League is that they're able to dominate games in terms of possession and in terms of being the protagonist, but when they get into the final third, they lack that clinicalness and cutting edge. But on top of that, they're pretty open defensively as well because of how high that they play. And when you're playing really that high, you're vulnerable to the ball over the top, to transition moments, and if you don't take advantage when the opportunities come, whenever the other team finally gets a chance to attack, they will have so much space and so much room to play in behind, and it'll just take that one moment and Tottenham find themselves dominating the last 30-35 minutes, but Newcastle is the one that scores, or Arsenal is the one that scores. And it's been the same story so far to Tottenham's. In every 4 game, after every single game, besides obviously the Everton game in which they just dominated Everton, in the 3 games that they've been unsuccessful in, it's been the same story. And, Postecoglou could say the same things at each press conference, and we couldn't tell which game he was talking about because it was the same story in all games, just lacking that cutting edge in the attack. And and look, there was that opening day. Solanke did have a few opportunities, couldn't really take advantage. That second game that they were disappointing in against Newcastle, he wasn't involved, so we gave them a little bit of a pass for that. Against Arsenal, he was involved, and look, against Arsenal, yes, Arsenal defended really, really well, but Solanke didn't have a few opportunities. He had one half opportunity on a back post header that it was tightly marked on, and he made the best out of nothing, which is sort of which is what he was brought in to do. But not enough balls played in, not enough cross sent in, not enough times where they took the risk and played the ball into space for Solanke to have a strike. He didn't really find himself in opportunities to score. There was not good enough service for him in that Arsenal game, and at the same time, Arsenal did defend really, really well overall. But look, they have a lot of possession. They find themselves in the attacking half of Tottenham all the time, but they just don't create enough clear-cut opportunities. And they don't, and since Solanke has been in, they haven't created, in that Arsenal game, they didn't create enough clear-cut opportunities with him. And the problem, we can't point out and say the attackers are not good. Son Heung-min, Kulusevski, these are some really, really good players. Dominic Solanke, he scored 19 goals in the Premier League last season. We're waiting to see whether he is up for the task, being a lead man for a team that has aspirations like Tottenham do of getting back in the top 4. Is he good enough at that level? We don't know. But for us to figure out, there needs to be more clear-cut opportunities created for him, and the team needs to create more in general. And then on top of that, they have the issues that they have in terms of not being clinical enough in the attack, and then the few moments that they find themselves defending, with the way that they play, they find themselves very vulnerable because they're playing really, really high. That second goal from Newcastle, it was, I'd be so frustrating watching that as a Tottenham fan. You're watching a game, you're dominating the game. This is at St. James's Park as well. In the second half, 30-35 minutes, it's constant pressure, trying to, create that opportunity, trying to find that space, trying to get that ball into the back of the net to give yourself the lead. You're constantly pressurizing them. And then in the snap of a finger, Newcastle get on the ball. They play that one ball in behind and they're in, and it's 2-1 just like that. Completely against the run of the play, and that's the problem too. How high they play their defensive line is it's been described as suicidal. That's how high that they play, and it's something that Postecoglou is not. He's stubborn about it. The brilliant managers, in which we're still trying to figure out whether he belongs in that group or not. In terms of brilliant managers, they don't really have a plan B. They really try to make plan A better, and Tottenham do have this very high line, and they play very, very bold, and it allows them to be more on the front foot in the game. But if you're on the front foot and you're not taking advantage of your opportunities, then you're gonna concede them going the other way, and that's just the cold hard reality. And even with the pace that Mickey Van de Ven can provide for you, they still have that helps you a little bit in transitional moments, but they still have that weakness that they have in defending set pieces that goes back to last season as well. And that was, again, the reason of their downfall against Arsenal. Arsenal did not create much clear-cut out opportunities against Tottenham. Martinelli had one early on, but apart from that, it was Tottenham, not creating any clear-cut opportunities, but they were the ones that generally had the possession, especially in the attacking third. But Arsenal, they stayed tight defensively. They didn't give up much space. They didn't give up any opportunities. And when they've found a moment to capitalize on a weakness of Tottenham, they did exactly that, and it's exactly what you do in a North London derby away. And yeah, for me, Tottenham, they have multiple issues that they need to fix. It's not just the lack of cutting edge in the attack, which is their biggest issue, but also defensively. You can find yourselves in individual moments and make those sort of mistakes that they make. They're so easy to play in behind because of how high they are. They make clumsy mistakes on set pieces as well, and you just need to tidy that up going forward, because the honeymoon period is over for Ange Postecoglou. There was a lot of praise for how they played last season in the attacking football, but eventually you're going to have to cash checks for this season. You can't cash in all the checks from last season. Eventually they will expire. And yeah, Tottenham, they do need to improve. There's no doubt about that. They move on to take Brentford this Saturday before their Europa League campaign starts off that following Thursday. Will they take on Karabag, and then that following weekend, on that following Sunday, they have a big game going away to Old Trafford to take on Manchester United. So yeah, interesting stretch of games coming up for them as well. Show break here coming up. When we come back, we will preview Arsenal going to Bergamo to take on Atalanta.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we discussed Tottenham and their concerns that I have about them, their lack of cutting edge in the attack. We move on to preview Arsenal. They going away I say tomorrow, but technically today, to Bergamo, Italy, where they'll be taking on Atalanta. In their opening game of the Champions League. This is an Arsenal team that are coming off so far a relatively good start in the Premier League, with 3 wins and then that draw, 2-10, a lot because of 10 men against Brighton, but they've had 2 really good victories going away to Aston Villa in the North London derby and Tottenham. So they're coming into this game with relatively good momentum. Declan Rice, he will be available in this game after being suspended against Tottenham. Odegaard will not be available in this Atalanta game, obviously. Martin Odegaard, Mikel Arteta, he was quiet about him immediately after the injury happened against Norway, and there was no announcement how long he'll be out or not for a few days. He was announced that initially he was doubtful for that North London derby. Then eventually, obviously he didn't play, and it took until today for Arteta to confirm that he'll be out for a while. I thought, for me, I knew this for a while now. As soon as I saw the pictures of Odegaard going onto the plane with what is it called? The things that help you when you break your leg. Oh my God, not break your leg, but when you don't want to put a thing on. What are the things called? Man, they're mistaking not a cast, but the what are they called? Okay, going back to the main point, I'll figure it out what they're called is. But as I was saying, it was obvious that he was going to be out for a while, Martin Odegaard. But going back to this game, Arsenal. Hold on, give me 1 second. Crutches. That's what it was. Oh my goodness. When he was, immediately afterwards, you saw him on crutches entering the plane to fly back to London. As soon as you saw that, you realized that he couldn't put any weight on his ankle. So we knew it was a bad ankle injury, and he suffered damages in his ligaments as well. So yeah, he's gonna be out for a while in this game. As far as Atalanta and their start off to their Serie A campaign, not a horrible start, but they 2 losses is 2 wins, 2 losses. This is a team coming off a Europa League victory last season, in which Ademola Lookman had that hat trick in the final against a Leverkusen team that were invincible their entire season. Besides that one game, that's the one team that Leverkusen lost to all season in all competitions. Atalanta, they had that opening day really good win over Les. I don't know if I'm saying that right, where they were able to get 4 past them. And then recently, in their recent game, they beat Fiorentina 3-2. But they also had a bad loss to Torino, and then a really bad loss to Inter Milan 4-0. So we know what's the deal with AC Milan under Gasperini. They're kind of play very, very open. They're good in cup competitions as well, and they're willing to play open and go at even the top teams. They play very high attacking, high intensity attacking football. They love going forward, and this is a team that has suffered some injuries as well. So they're and Gasperini has come out and he's said it clear cut that they're not they're not as good of a team as they were last season up to now, obviously. But they're still a team at home playing in your opening game in the Champions League that can cause some issues for Arsenal, definitely. Especially Arsenal are going to have to go into this game having, one, at least one eye looking towards that City game, because this game is being played on a Thursday away to Italy. On a Sunday, you're having to go to Manchester to take on City. So essentially, you're going to be flying back, you're going to be flying back to London. You're going to have Friday to train for City. And then Saturday, you're going to be going up to Manchester. So, that's not ideal circumstances to find themselves in. And I'm very interested to see how Mikel Arteta approaches. Do we see a full-fledged team? Does he give the likes of a Bukayo Saka, who we know how important he is for Arsenal? Does he give him a rest for that City game? I do think Declan Rice is going to be back, and the fact that he missed this weekend's game, so he's a little bit more fresh. But, does Arsenal, are any of the players, do they get a rest in this game? Because that Manchester City game on Sunday is crucial. You lose to them, and you're already 5 points behind them. This early in the season, already having, that wide of a gap, a multi-game gap, that's a very vulnerable position and a very dangerous position to find yourself in this early in the season. And it's exactly what Arsenal would like to avoid. So I'm very interested to see Mikel Arteta. Does he rest players? Because honestly, it's almost not fair. City playing a game early, City playing a day earlier, having an extra day of rest. On top of that, they're playing the game against Inter Milan at home, and they're not having to do any travel because the game on Sunday as well as home. So they're having that extra day rest, and they're also playing both games at home, while Arsenal are having an extra day of an extra day less of rest. And on top of that, they're having to go away intercontinentally, away, fly to Italy, having to go back to London, and then go up to Manchester to play another set of traveling to play another away game. So the odds are against Arsenal in terms of that as well. So, and you don't want to underestimate Atalanta. You want to put yourself in a strong foot as well in the Champions League, because again, with Arsenal, I put them sort of in the pot 1 teams, despite them being a pot 2 teams, in the fact that they're one of the teams that are trying to look into getting into the top 8, so they don't have to worry about playing unnecessary 2 games, a playoff to get in. They do also have to play PSG, Inter Milan, as well in this Champions League, campaign. So, you want to take advantage of your opportunities when they come. And, I don't know. I was watching I was talking to some of my Arsenal friends, and there was a divide in terms of should they rest, should they go for full strength. I think going full strength in this game is a little too much. I think I'd mix and match. I'd probably, get Calafiori in there, especially Calafiori for Julian Timber. We know the injury issues that Julian Timber has had. I'll definitely get Calafiori in there, and the fact that he's Italian, so he's used to going up against Italian opposition. It's his comfort zone. If Calafiori is good to go for this game, I would you want the solidity. I don't know if that's a word, but you want the strong center back partnership of Gabriel and William Saliba. I think if you break that up, it'll make it a little bit more vulnerable. So I wouldn't break that up. In the midfield wise, I will give Thomas Partey a rest. Him being a little bit someone older in there, I'd give an opportunity for. Actually, I do not know who you would play for Thomas Partey in there. I'll probably play Jorginho alongside Declan Rice, because I think Declan Rice will be good to play in this game and that game. I would I'll start off with Saka, I would start off with Saka because, this is an important game against Atalanta. You don't want to completely overlook them, and he's just so important. But I would sort of play him only about 55 minutes, give him that mark, and allow him to rest the majority of the second half. You don't want to put 90 minutes on him. I will, though, not play Martinelli. Instead, I'll take out Martinelli and I'll take out Kai Havertz. I'll insert Gabriel Jesus to play through the middle, and I'll let Raheem Sterling to have an opportunity, have a 90 minutes to show what he's about. We'll get to see, is Raheem Sterling really there at the level to battle for a spot to play for Arsenal? So yeah, I'd definitely introduce Raheem Sterling in there. And if you do want to give Bukayo Saka a rest, you can mix and match, probably play Sterling on the right-hand side and bring in Trossard as well on the left-hand side. But definitely I would mix and match if I was Mikel Arteta, no doubt about that. And Raheem Sterling, I think it's very important that he gets to start in this game and he gets the 90 minutes to show Mikel Arteta what he's about, if he's still at that level. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll react to some of the top soccer headlines going on the soccer world. Before the break, we previewed Arsenal going to Bergamo to take on Atalanta. We move on to react to some of the top soccer headlines. We start off though we discussed this a little bit in the last segment. Mikel Arteta, he officially announced that Odegaard will be out for a while after sustaining a significant ankle injury while he was playing for Norway last weekend. Arteta said the scans showed that he's got some damage, especially on one of the ligaments in the ankle. It's something to lose your most important creative player for a while is, because you can get away with it in a game or two and be a little bit more defensive and nick a goal here and there. But you can't do that consistently, and you're going to need that creativity that Mikel Arteta provides, especially in the fact that there's not much creativity in that team outside of him. The wingers are not the most creative players. Havertz dropping in or Trossard dropping in or whatever, they're not really the most creative players as well. So his creativity was very vital to the way Arsenal played. So I think long term this could be a big issue for Arsenal, I do have to say. But we move on. Borussia Dortmund, they were able to get a 3-0 win over Club Brugge as they opened up their Champions League campaign this season. This is a Borussia Dortmund team that went to the final of the Champions League last season. Now it's a little bit new look team being managed by Nuri Sahin, and they're determined to build on what they had last season in the Champions League. Obviously, he was an assistant manager in that second half of the season last season, eventually getting promoted as a Borussia Dortmund manager, and look, it was a late win for them. Going away to play at the in Bruges against Club Bruges. Not the most simple of games, but they got it. They got it through 2 late goals from Jamie Bynon Giddens, who came off the bench, actually, the 20-year-old English player, and he was able to get goals in the 76 and 86 minutes, and then an insurance goal by Girassi coming off the bench as well, in the 95th minute, or the 95th minute, was able to cap it off for Borussia Dortmund. Good win for them. They go on in the Champions League, and they will be playing Celtic at home at Signal Iduna Park. So good win for them, and they also have Barcelona as well later on the campaign. They actually play Barcelona and Real Madrid. So Borussia Dortmund, they will have some tests in this Champions League campaign that we're looking forward to. But the Champions League rematch, will also get that Borussia Dortmund Real Madrid, the Champions League final rematch. Moving on though, the rest of the Champions League, let's do sort of a roundup for the rest of the fixtures. Actually, there was only one. Bologna and Shakhtar Donetsk finished 0-0. Sparta Praha was able to get a 3-0 win over Salzburg. The big game, though, the out of the games we didn't really discuss up to this point, Celtic playing at, this game was played at Celtic Park, got a 5-1 win over Slovan Bratislava. The Celtic team that's led by Brendan Rodgers, that play some really good football, that are getting players forward, that are willing to be on the front foot in games. They were able to get 5 past Slovan Bratislava, and they played a really good game. They took advantage of one of the greatest atmospheres in European football. So really good win for them, as they want to make, as they try to build some sort of push, trying to, potentially maybe in this sort of league campaign, you give yourself they have a better opportunity to find themselves in the knockout stage. Who knows? They have in the atmosphere that, that will really give them a heads up going forward. No doubts about that. De Bruyne, he might be a doubt for Arsenal he might be a doubt for Arsenal this Sunday. He was forced off injury in the game against Inter Milan. He picked up the injury late in the first half when he was trying to catch onto a through ball that was played from Jack Grealish. Guardiola said, "We'll assess tonight and I'll have more information tomorrow. The doctor said to me he wasn't right to play, but I was thinking about changing it at halftime anyway. When you are alone and lose easy balls, it's a counterattack. It's impossible to stop it. You have to be more precise. It happened especially on the left side. With Kevin, we lost the ball without pressure, and when that happens, they can kill you." So, we'll see. We'll get more information tomorrow, and we'll see if Kevin De Bruyne will be available for that Inter Milan game. Not Inter Milan game, that Arsenal game. There's a lot of it is, with the Champions League. I talked about briefly in the AFL Cup. We know that yesterday United were able to get past Barnsley 7-0. I also discussed Tottenham's 2-1 win over Coventry. Brighton was able to get past Wolves 3-2. This game was played at the former stadium, formerly known as the Amex. So good for Brighton to be able to move on to the next round of the EFL Cup. Thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. So thank you once again and have a wonderful, wonderful day.